Everyone. Welcome to our council meeting. I'll just read the chair's introduction to this physical meeting. Thank you to all members of the public, councillors and officers who are joining us for today's meeting. Please be aware that the council is live streaming this meeting through our YouTube channel. I would just like to highlight some key points of the meeting format. Councillors looking to speak will be invited to do so by the chair and will need to come up to their nearest microphone at the front to speak unless you have a microphone on your table. For councillors that have table microphones, the sound technician will be unmuting your microphones when you're invited to speak. If councillors have any concerns about hearing or seeing others in the meeting, please let the chair or council officer know straight away. If anyone uses hearing aids, please make sure to connect to the hearing loop for the best sound quality. If anyone is joining the meeting via Zoom, there will be a noticeable time delay, so we must be mindful of this when we are interacting with them and allow them time to hear what is being said and to respond. I must also run through a few key health and safety points for those physically in this meeting room. We encourage that face masks are worn at all times except when you are speaking at a microphone or unless you have a medical exemption. The fire exits are via the main entrance that you entered through the venue through or the disabled access entry point. The assembly point is out on West Down Road to the east of the building, if you're able to, up towards the unmade section of Wilmington Road. In the venue, please limit your touching of shared surfaces as best possible, though I can confirm that the tables, chairs and other surfaces and facilities have been cleaned ahead of the meeting. Please remain seated unless you're invited to speak or need to take a comfort break. The toilet facilities are by the main entrance doors. When moving around the room, please be mindful of keeping a comfortable distance from others. I'd ask that participants looking to leave the room wait until the end of an agenda item to limit distractions for other participants. Voting will be done by a show of hands. Please make sure your hand is clearly lifted up and keep it up until the chair is called the vote. The meeting goes into a confidential session. A short 2-minute break will be held to allow members of the public to leave and to stop the live stream feed. Members of the public are invited to participate in one of three ways: remotely via Zoom, physically in the meeting, or by submitting a written statement to be read out. Those members of the public looking to participate via Zoom will be invited to do so first at the relevant point of the agenda. Zoom users are reminded to keep yourself muted unless you're invited to speak. The technical host will prompt when it is your turn to speak via the chat function, so please keep an eye on your Zoom chat function. Members of the public physically in the meeting room will be invited to speak next. Please raise your hand to show you wish to speak, and the chair will invite you to come to the microphone in the order you indicate. Finally, a council officer will read aloud any written statements that have been submitted. Public participation is limited to a maximum of 4 minutes per person and must be relating to an agenda item, a business item on this agenda. You do not need to state your name when you start speaking if you do not wish, but we ask that you clearly state which agenda item you're speaking about. To all present, please remember to show respect to others in the meeting and avoid interrupting where possible to enable others to follow the meeting. If any councillor feels concerned about any aspect of the meeting or discussion, please clearly state point of order. The chair will then gesture for you to elaborate. If anyone present is felt to be behaving unacceptably, they can be ejected from the meeting by a resolution. Thank you for listening. On behalf of the council, I would like to thank everyone for attending this town council meeting. And just one note to add to that. If it looks as we have a very long agenda, if it looks as though the agenda will run a long time beyond 9 o'clock, I suggest we might choose to take a comfort break at 9 o'clock and then resume. So, thank you. We come to apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Adil, Councillor Everton, Councillor Adeniji, and I think Councillor Webb. Clark, are there any other apologies? Okay, that's all of the apologies. Now we come to disclosure of interests. This is agenda item number 2. To deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable pecuniary interests and interests other than pecuniary interests as defined by the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and the Localism Act 2011 in relation to matters on the agenda. So does any member need to make a disclosure of interests? No, I see no one, so we move ahead. We move to public participation to deal with any questions or brief representations from members of the public in accordance with relevant legislation and Seaford Town Council policy. As I've said, there are 3 ways in which members of the public can participate. So we have members of the public here with us. Does any of the members of the public here wish to speak? No. Anyone on Zoom? No. Any written statements to be read out? No. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item 4, the minutes of the previous meetings. Gulf and the View from the 8th of June. Would the chairman of Gulf and the View like to propose that? Propose the acceptance. Propose the minutes are accurate. Seconded by someone. Councillor Payne. All those in favour. That's carried. Planning and highways. There are 4 minutes listed. 4 minutes listed here. Would the chair of planning and highways like to move those be accepted? That's 4 are proposed together. Someone to second that. Councillor Borman. All those in favour. The full council of the 23rd of June. I think there's an amendment in this one at C47 to remove the confusion about district with confusion of the Lewis County ward. So with that amendment, someone move those as accurate. Councillor Payne, those seconded. Councillor Brown, all those in favour. Thank you. Our community services, Councillor Hanneman, you'd like to move this? Moved. Seconded. Yes. Councillor Heider, all those in favour. Finance and general purposes, Councillor Brown, you move this?
Thank you, Chair. Propose that we accept the minutes with the relevant recommendations as shown following on from this report.
Thank you. And then within this there are the F10 and F11, which are in the... These are in our agenda pack on pages 11. Pages 11 through 13. That's 11 through to 16. Yes. Yes. So that's proposed that these are carried with these the recommendations and resolutions that are noted here. So someone second that. Councillor Payne. All those in favour. It's carried. So those are all of the finance and general purposes, the minutes and the recommendations that are contained within them. So we're content, we can move on from there, yes? So we're now moving on to We're now moving on to agenda item 5, which is the Mayor's report. We're moving to page 17. Now, conscious that we have a long agenda, I will be brief about this. What I've set out to do is to show something more about the Facebook activity, the social media activity of the council, or the Mayor's Facebook page. And you can see that during July, there were 916 likes, and that in the month, the engaged visitors varied between 324 and 550. Something like 2,786 video views, and the tables that follow give you some more statistics. The audience is mainly from Seaford, or sort of the 55% of the audience to the Mayor's Facebook is Seaford. 84% are UK, and then you'll see there's an analysis of the other parts from which they come. It's been a good time for me as mayor to be able to get out and do things physically. There have been events in the town and events in neighbouring towns I can represent as mayor to the town and for the town around the area. The one memorable event was the Over the Rainbow sponsored walk, and I want to commend Councillor Jean Cash as Deputy Mayor for her initiative and drive behind that. So the Mayor's Charity Initiative is now ongoing with video interviews. I hope you see these on the Mayor's Facebook page. The strategy is now to support charities to raise funds, and that Over the Rainbow Walk raised just about £4,800, which the charities had for themselves and kept. There is a Support Our Seaford Charities event that hopefully everyone here has seen posted extensively around the town, weekend after next. And there are, I think now, something like 33 of the charities who were part of the Mayor's Charity Initiative going to have a stall there. And one of the activities will be a cash prize draw by the town council with the mayor and the town clerk, using the cash from what was the small money that was raised last year for 3 cash prizes for charities who have stalls at the event. So it's good to say that I'm busier in terms of events around the town and for the town, and as I said, our Facebook pages are also very busy. Does anyone want to ask questions about the Mayor's report? No, that's good. We can move ahead to the Young Mayor's report. Unfortunately, Joe is on holiday at the moment. It was actually good to have Erin out today at the centenary of the Royal British Legion event that was held in the Seaford Cemetery, so she was there. It's very good to have another young person there because one of the young sea cadets was there to take part in it, so it's good that she could be there in Joe's absence. Just to read Joe's report. Joe went to the Climate and Eco Fair and learned a lot about climate change and what can be done. This month he met with the head of Defiant Sport, his chosen charity for his year in office. Defiant Sport is a charity to help adults and children with barriers to sport to get into sport. They provide coaching, facilities, and specialised games to help everyone take part. The reason he chose this charity is because he's extremely passionate about sport and wanted everyone to be able to have the chances he's had. He will be representing Defiant Sport on the 5th of September with his charity stall there. So a Young Mayor's Charity stall in aid of Defiant Sport. He offers his thanks for his invitation to the Mayor's Civic Service. He's met lots of people with all sorts of roles and backgrounds and really appreciated the experience. He's learned a lot. The events he's attended, the Mayor's Civic Service on 31st of July and the Seaford Climate and Eco Fair, a Greener Seaford on the 1st of August. So if anybody would like to either commend him or ask him questions, you have his email address. So I think we will conclude item 6 at that point. Item 7 is working group reports, which is a standard agenda item to accommodate reports from Town Council Working Group. The Assets Working Group update has informed the report presented at item 14 on this agenda. The Climate Change Working Group will be reporting back at the October Full Council, although a brief update is within the Town Clerk's update report at item 10 of this agenda. So we're ready to move ahead. We move ahead to item 8, outside body representative reports. Again, a standard agenda item to enable councillors appointed as representatives of 2 outside bodies of the town to give brief verbal updates of relevant business and activities on that outside body. This is simply something for noting. Does any councillor here who sits as an external body representative want to say something under this agenda item? Councillor Walraven. The nearest microphone, please.
Thank you. We haven't had Bishopstown United Charities. We haven't had any meetings as such, but I'd just like to say on behalf of the trustees of the charity to thank the council for the grant they have received. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillor who's an external body representative? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first one is the Golf Committee, which meets just about once every month. I've attended the first meeting of that committee, and at that meeting they were showing some concern about the 17th green and also about a large crack on the cliff, and managed to sort of allay their fears a little bit. And they've got another meeting on the 1st of September when I'll liaise with the town clerk to what I tell them about what's happening on the golf course on that green. The second one is Lewis District Association of Local Councils. I've been to 3 meetings so far on that one, including our AGM, where they appointed the officers for the coming year, and they decided to meet every 2 months from now on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other councillor wishes to speak? Councillor Edson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, this is about the Joint Action Group. Most of what they deal with is all Lewis centred, but a few weeks back I happened to bump into someone while I was out delivering for the food bank, and all I needed was his number on the the pad outside his flat, and he said, well, it's no good me giving it to you because it's broken. So I went, oh, okay then, Then that went on to his front door that had been smashed open, and he said, let me show you this. And it was his front door that somebody had tried to kick in. So I said, oh, well, I suppose I'll have to bring that to your attention. That afternoon, I was at a joint action group, and I brought it to the attention of Colin Richardson from Neighbourhood First. And before the end of the meeting, he actually had someone with this chap at his flat. And I thought that was really good, that was, really, when you come to think of it. I just brought it up and say, can you do something about this fella? Everything's all wrong, But yeah, he said, there's someone with him now. So the joint action group is kind of okay, but it's mainly Lewis. Another time I asked a police officer what they'd done to prepare for the weekends, the warm weekends when we have more people down at the beach, and they said, well, no, we've not made any extra plans. It's just basically response, which is unfortunately what they do nowadays. But anyway, it's little things like that we can bring up now and again, but most of the time you just sit there listening to about things that's happening in Lewis. But now and again we get one in. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Edson. Anyone else? Any other councillors? No, I think we've come to the end of that agenda item. Any of our district or county councillors, I think, here who would like to say something? Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lewis District Council's got 2 consultations open until the 20th of September, which is a licensing and also a gambling one. Also, residents would have received an email or a letter from the District Council asking them to update their electoral register, so who living in the house that's of electoral age. So that's my update for now.
Okay, thank you. Any other district councillor want to speak? Okay, I think we'll say no. That resolves that item. We move on to item 10 and our Town Clerk's update report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. Great to see you all. As you will see from the report, I've reflected the fact that I've been in post for more than 6 months now by splitting the report into 2 halves. The appendix at the end is the story of the first half of this calendar year for the Council, and then the report being presented this evening is essentially a list of aims for this role and, if you like, the Council's work over this 6-month period for the rest of the really for the rest of the municipal year, really going into early next year. And as you can see from the report, I've identified 14 key areas of work and then provided you with a report under each one. The first is strategic objectives. That's an agenda item tonight, so we'll talk about it there. Climate emergency. I think that the councillors really need to understand that Seaford Town Council councillors and officers are taking our commitment to climate emergency extremely seriously, and a lot is happening, as you can see within the report. And I think in terms of our ongoing liaison with our residents, I think it's really important for people to understand that we're not just talking about climate emergency, we're doing stuff. And some of the examples of the work are within this report. And I think it's important to highlight those. Thirdly, staycation. Again, regular reports are going to community services on that work from the work we did back together in March. Finances, regular reports obviously through Finance and General Purpose Committee, and obviously the Chair of the Committee has reported tonight, Councillor Brown. But the good news is that our finances so far, touch wood, but so far during this municipal year, after the strong performance last year to increase our level of reserves, the performance so far this year is definitely on budget so far. So things are on a positive note financially in the here and now for the Council. And I want to thank our RFO and her team for all the work that's making that possible. COVID changes. Again, this evening we're discussing about meeting locations for councillors going forward. And meanwhile, we've been working with the officers on appropriate arrangements for staff going forward. And those are being agreed with each of the relevant members of staff. That's been done. Then Section 106 Newlands, it's important, that's on the list for this 6 months to bring a report to full council, so there'll be a report about that during the rest of this municipal year. It's a priority, obviously, to take that forward. Number 7, I'm starting Silca. I've actually enrolled for the pre-course, the induction bit, if you like, which is happening in September and expect to begin in October. Martello Toilets, number 8, is on the agenda tonight. Lewis Local Plan, number 9, is on the agenda tonight. Seaford Head, we had a report from the archaeologists at the last meeting. And just to say, Historic England are about to give the go-ahead for this work to proceed. And so it's really fantastic as a council we're able to work with South Downs National Park and Historic England to undertake that research into learning more about Seaford Head Iron Age fort before eventually it will, of course, be lost to coastal erosion. And then meanwhile, we continue to take all necessary actions around coastal erosion, as has been discussed at these meetings and others. 11, parking will be bringing a report to full council again during this municipal year on steps forward around parking and seeing what changes the councillors would like to consider going into the future. 12, grounds maintenance contract review will be done during this municipal year. 13, Hurdis House lease negotiations are proceeding. And the golf professionals review is also proceeding. So my approach, as I've said since the beginning, is to provide as much clarity and transparency for councillors as possible, and I hope this report is fulfilling that brief. I'm happy to take any questions or comments before we take the vote. Thank you.
So any questions for the Town Clerk?
Yes.
Oh yes, sorry, Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's sort of really centred around D&E, page 25. Have we got an update on the fields in trust? Because we sort of put that in a little while ago, and for our own land and for the response from Lewis District Council on the 3 pieces of land they own. Thank you.
Yeah, we've liaised with our monitoring officer and relevant officers at Lewis District, and they are going to come back to us with more detail once the councillors at Lewis District have considered the position. So it's a pending piece of work awaiting further update from Lewis District.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions for the Town Clerk on his report? No? Well, thank you, Adam. We can move on again.
Oh, sorry, Chair, we need to note the report.
Oh, my apologies. Someone move we note the contents. Councillor Edson, someone second that. Councillor Dunn, all those in favour. That's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
We're now on to item 11. And this is it's not a numbered part of your pack because it came out as a separate report. So this is report 6421, it's agenda item 11. And hopefully everyone has a copy of the report, the graphics that came with it, or the printouts that came with it. What I propose to do for this item is to do this in 2 ways. Is to propose to the meeting we suspend the standing orders for the beginning of this item to allow councillors and our architect to be in discussion with each other. So we suspend standing orders. This is about questions, not about putting proposals at this stage. It's simply about points of clarification. So then Adam's here to address those. Then once that session is finished, I propose that we put the standing orders back into place, and then we can move to I'll move to propose the motion. and then, or propose motions 1 and 2, or recommendations 1 and 2. And at that point, we're open to amendments or motions in response to that. But we'll begin on I propose that we suspend our standing orders to allow a discussion session between councillors and our architect. And then as soon as that section is completed, we then bring the standing orders back in and carry on with the usual meeting. So I propose we suspend our standing orders for this part of the meeting. Someone second that? Councillor Payne, all those in favour?
Yeah.
I think that's everybody.
That's everyone.
Okay, I think, I don't know if you'd like to come to the, who's coming to the microphone to speak?
So just this, sorry, this is, as Councillor Reid has just explained, but I know we've got a lot to get through tonight, so I'll make this as clear as I can. This is for any questions councillors have about the proposals. And our architect, I'm very grateful to Giles from our architects to attend this evening. He's happy to answer any questions people have. Once we've done the questions, then we'll put standing orders back and debate the motion. Okay, so does anyone, this is just your opportunity. If you haven't, don't worry, it's not a requirement, but obviously we just wanted to make sure that everyone's completely across all the things they need to be before we debate the motion. So if anyone had any further questions, we'll take them down. Councillor Payne, thank you.
If you come to the microphone, please, and then Councillor Honeyman.
And then Councillor Honeyman, thank you.
I just wanted some confirmation on the smells of the cooking. Will the roof space be enough so it won't all drift onto the beach?
Okay, I think we'll take questions 2 or 3 together. So Councillor Honeyman.
Giles to come up and answer them.
And Giles, if you want to come up to the microphone now. And Councillor Honeyman, if you go from that side, Giles can go from this side.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of points. I've noticed that there is a serving hatch for takeaways here. I also noticed that obviously on the right-hand side there's also the existing self-service cafe at the moment. So I was wondering how it was going to survive together in Tango, or maybe that full detail hasn't been thought about, but I still think it's quite an important question, you know, because it is so close. And I know originally when we had discussions in the 17 and 19, the concession, the existing concession was going to go one end of the well, you might have called it the Iconic Cafe, and maybe this is what it's all about now, this Iconic Cafe. I like the idea that it is a cafe, more a cafe as opposed to mainly a toilet block, so your emphasis is good, which I like. And my final question is, the main openings is, as you know, that area is really open to the elements there, and the main doors are to the southwest, so obviously in the winter months when the weather really can be very, very bad down there, I just wondered what alternative situations you may have for access and egress sort of thing for that particular site. What sort of protection you may be giving that particular building as we can get inclement days, especially in the winter months. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
thank you. I think Giles will take those 2 first, and then we'll see how many more come after that.
Back to the first one, which is about smells from the cooking. We've designed it so there's enough space above the kitchen to provide a full commercial ventilation system, which will have filters to prevent smells blowing out through the ventilation system. Obviously, there's a maintenance issue there as well. The closeness of the serving hatch between the 2 concessions. I would imagine that during the summer, you can go into the building because those big large doors will be open, so probably the serving hatch on the proposed building will be used less. But yes, there is adjacencies there, and I know because I walk along there that there is sometimes an issue with the amount of people that are queuing outside there and stop pedestrians walking along. But I can't see a way around that at this moment in time, but we can't move the kitchen location, so that's where the servery's got to be, I think. The windy access, obviously, I think I mentioned it last time, the glazed corner screens, there's 3 sliding doors. We will, in the winter, yes, it will be on the south facade, but you only need to open the door that wide to be able to get in, so they're not fully opened. And again, I don't think it would probably be appropriate to have a door on the north facade, for example, because we need to have that door visible. I think
Okay,
those
thank you.
answers to those questions.
Other questions, other councillors?
Okay. Oh,
Councillor Walraven, anyone else?
This is the last one.
Okay, Councillor Walraven, if you'd like to make your way to a microphone. Charles, if you stay where you are.
Thank you. I like the design very much. I've just got one concern. I think you said the highest point is 2 feet higher than the original building. My concern is with the Martello Tower being a Grade 2 listed building, that this development won't be overpowering the Martello Tower. I've got my planning hat on at the moment.
I take your point. It's a fine line, and I think 2 feet is probably okay. You know, it's only that much, but it does slope down again. It almost respects the Martello Tower by sloping up towards it, architecturally and considering the listed building. I think it works, and I don't think we will expect any objections from the heritage team at Lewis. In my opinion, but we can always lower it down a tad if we needed to.
But I think it's, you know, it's a good design for the seafront and it's a good contrast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, now I know I've said we've got a long meeting, and I don't want that to be a reason to try and hurry through this. So I wanted to have enough time to ask questions and to give considered answers. So I think Councillor Lord and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors. There's just one question on the elevation regarding the sliding windows. This is I think the southwest facing. How does somebody in a wheelchair open a sliding window? Is there some kind of mechanical device that allows the windows to open, the windows to slide back automatically so they can go in and they close afterwards? Or is it an automatic device where any member of the public walk up to it and it slides back automatically? Because you can imagine, we're doing all these complicated designs for the disabled toilets, etc. But the main access, you've got to physically slide a door open. And you and I both know, if they're not maintained on a very regular basis, they do tend to stick. And reaching forward in a wheelchair makes it incredibly difficult. It's just something you can give a little bit of consideration to it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That's one, and then we'll have Councillor Brown. Giles, if you'd like to take a few paces backwards, then Councillor Brown can use the same microphone.
Thank you, Giles.
It avoids Councillor Brown having to go the full length of the room. So it's,
First of all, I'd like to apologise to councillors for saying there was no money in the budget. There is a very limited amount of money in the budget, but nowhere near enough to cover the cost of the build of the new toilet. So apologies there. Secondly, I'd like to propose that we make a nominal charge for using the toilets, and if we do that, you need to take into account the fact that we need to put meters on the door, and that needs to be costed. Okay, thank you.
yeah. Councillor Brown, if that's a proposal, we'll need to come back to that later on, which might be an amendment rather than a proposal. But okay, Giles, we're back in again.
So those last two questions I won't be able to answer, but the one about the disabled access and the sliding door, I really take your point on that. That's something we definitely need to look at. Cost is an issue, but accessibility is almost more important than that. So I think we need to look at that. The quality of the sliding doors that we are using on other buildings, that's where we spend the money on those doors. You can slide with a finger to open them. But I take your point. If you're on your own in a wheelchair, that's very hard to do. So we'll need to look at that. But we might have to have a compromise.
Okay. I think the point about money was simply just stating a reality, I think. Any other councillor want to? Right, Councillor Hyder. Perhaps if you use the microphone on your left.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor. Is a coffee bar. I think is nothing to worry about the smell, because nowadays the health and environment, they come, they tell every coffee bar and restaurant what sort of canopy and what sort of filter they use. You know, it's very nice and up-to-date one. They take the bad smell and make it fresh when they come out. And plus, in public places, as far as I know, you got to have good insurance, public liability, and customer and the staff. So I think if the gentleman is doing all this, I think is nothing to worry. So I thank you very much.
I think the point there is that, that the filters need to be capable of removing all of the smells. And I think
Yes,
the other was...
they'll be designed for fish and chip restaurant type smells, and there'll be very good filters on there. Yeah.
I think the others were about, in our, probably for the town clerk, in terms of it's our business plan to make sure that, or our method of operating to make sure we have the relevant insurances in place so it can be run safely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And just to add to that, we would have to satisfy environmental health at Lewis District Council that we've provided sufficient filters.
Okay, Councillor Honeyman again. And does anyone else want to speak? Right, okay, you get a second opportunity.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm still a little bit unsure about that second, the existing concession, how it's going to fit in. I don't really know if that was really answered that well, but maybe that's more a town council situation.
I might have a little go at that, if that's all
But
right,
can I
Charles,
got
as well.
one other little bit as well before I go and sit down?
Yeah.
That's all right. Obviously, tonight we are going to obviously agree the principle essentially, but obviously there'll be nitty-gritty, which basically the likes of yourself, the officers will basically have to do. We don't want to come back to every time there's a community services meeting, every time. It's going to have to be sort of led by yourself, and you effectively get updates. I suppose what I was trying to say is there'll be maybe crucial bits may have to go towards councillors, but most of it will be down to your own.
That's exactly right.
Okay. But over the existing concession, I think that's got to be dealt with earlier on. That's my own.
That's fine. Essentially, the diagram shows two concessions. It will be a matter of, as things proceed, and councillors will actually be involved in this decision about what to have in the two bases. So we'll work with councillors to make the decision about what goes into the two bases, but that doesn't impact upon the design that's been presented tonight, because as Giles has explained both last week and tonight, basically the design of the main cafe is flexible about what can go in there. So councillors can have choices about what goes in there, and we'll do that through expression of interest to have a concession holder there. And then similarly, councillors can decide if they want to make any changes to the other concession. Again, there's a licence agreement there that Tony manages, obviously, as positive facilities officer, and we work with, obviously, we'll make sure current agreements, obviously, are not, we won't curtail them, but obviously if there is an opportunity for councillors to wish to make change, that would also exist in the future as well. So we'll work with councillors to have the best solution possible within the two concession sites, and the architect's design gives us the necessary flexibility to make that possible. I hope that addresses the point.
And presumably, Town Clerk, the concessions wouldn't have the same menus. They would have different kinds of offers, which would get...
Well, as I say, that's partly within our gift in terms of the two concessions that we award. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. We have control over that.
Okay. Now, before we go back to put our standing orders in place, does anyone else want to ask a question, make a statement? No, I think not. No one's signalling.
Thank you, Charles.
So thank you. So I propose that we resume our standing orders. Someone second that?
Thank you.
Councillor Payne, all those in favour? We're back into the meeting with standing orders. Now, what I propose to do now is to propose recommendations 1 and 2, but not to go straight to a vote. So I want to propose 1 and 2 and get that, and hopefully have someone second that. Then we discuss that, and then if there are amendments coming, I think Councillor Brown's suggested about charging might be an amendment. Then we'll take the first 1 and 2, and then we'll move on to 3 and 4. So,
yeah, just so we're all clear, I mean, 3 and 4 are the last bits we need to do, because whatever we agree tonight will then approve to send to National Lottery and approve to send to Lewis District for planning. So 3 and 4 can be considered at the end, if that makes sense, or be part of a final motion for this meeting, if that makes sense. So what Councillor Reid's doing now as chair is he's proposing 1 and 2. That will then be seconded, presumably someone seconds it. And then following that, we'll have a discussion, and then councillors are free within that discussion to propose amendments if they wish to. And obviously seconded amendments can also then be considered at the end of this item. Does that make, did I explain that okay? Did we explain that sufficiently? Okay, Chair, so if you'd like to propose
Yes,
1 and 2,
thank
we'll
you.
go from there. Thank you.
So I now propose from the Chair, recommendation 1 to note the report, recommendation 2 to approve the presented plans as the design to take forward for rebuilding the Martello toilets with changing places facility, noting that work will continue with councillors, officers and the consultant to take this project forward. Would someone second that? Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Okay, so that we've done that, so now we can go into discussion. So over to you, Chair.
Right, so now this takes the shape of discussing those 2 recommendations and whether there are any amendments. Councillor Dunn.
Regarding number 2, I know it's sort of a bit pernickety, but where it says, noting that work will continue with councillors, can you just add the word all councillors rather than it just being chairs of committees?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that we all have an opportunity to feed into this.
I don't see there's no issue with that.
Thank
Georgia,
you.
can you just add all to the motion? Is that okay?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Did you have a hand up to speak? Okay, I think we'll not move to vote yet, but so they're proposed and seconded. Does anyone want to propose any other? Councillor Brown, would you want to put your proposal about charging for the use of the toilets in at this point? Can you come to the microphone, please? Sorry.
Proposing that we make a nominal charge, possibly 20 pence to use the toilets. If people are going to say to me, well, what about big families? Well, I think I've got the accolades for that, but in the town council, you pay 120p and everybody gets in, so I don't see a problem with that. The 20p is to help with the cleaning costs of the toilets and also the ongoing maintenance, because after a while there's going to obviously be some maintenance costs that need to be taken into account. And if we do that, we need to get the architect to actually write in what the cost of putting meters on the doors would be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brown. Can I just ask a point of clarification from the Town Clerk? Were we to charge for the use of these toilets, would there be any implications on the possible grant makers associated with this project?
That's a good question, and I would not rule that out. I think that, again, that's an amendment that councillors will be in a position to vote on tonight, and we'll see if a majority of councillors wish to pass that.
Okay. Now Councillor Dunn, then Councillor Councillor Borman, sorry.
Regarding Councillor Brown's charging a nominal fee of 20 pence, as I understand it, and this may need clarity, I don't think you can put a charge on disabled toilets. Surely they have to be free for people to use. So technically, we're only going to be putting a charge on 3 toilets, because obviously the single toilets aren't disabled. So, but I don't know if that's correct or not, and I'm not in favour of charging. Thank you.
So you are in favour, you're not in favour?
No,
not in favour.
No.
Okay. It's not normal practice to charge for disabled toilets.
So it's not normal practice to charge for disabled toilets. Councillor Borman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. I don't support charging for toilets. Obviously, since COVID, most people have gone cashless. So people don't carry change. If they're then going to go to the local kiosks to ask for that 20 pence to help, actually businesses are charged by the banks to get change. So then you're putting additional cost on the businesses there. So I don't support the charges. One thing I do propose, though, is that we have waste and fresh water supply for camper vans. You can travel across Europe in a camper van, going to different villages. You charge for your wastewater and to top up your fresh water in your camper van. People do spend money in the towns, and I think that is something that the town should be looking for. So I propose that we have additional supply on the toilets. That can be locked away, and the kiosk can obviously take money for the additional costs to cover that.
So the ability to supply mains water to camper vans? Mains
water and wastewater, so they can dispose of their toilet facilities.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak? Councillor Payne.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Boorman. People won't carry 20 pence. One of the reasons we was looking at putting the QR code up at Seaford South Bar car park was people aren't carrying cash. If we're doing one, we don't do the other, you know.
Yeah.
But I also support her other proposal of the wastewater.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll take that as seconding that one. Thank you, Councillor Payne.
Councillor Honeyman. Richard Honeyman. While you're making the way to the microphone, I've also heard a comment previously that if we are not looking to encourage overnight camping or mobile home camper vans on the seafront, do we want to make it easier by giving them water and waste disposal? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just regarding the charging, obviously I sort of agree with both Councillor Brown and Councillor Boorman in a lot of ways. I was in central London, I don't know, about a month ago, and I was in Green Park, and as you do, you go to the loo, and they had contactless payments for 20p as part of their going through the gates, as you do there. I know it's in central London, and the throughput at Green Park's going to be quite more significant than maybe down on the South Seafront. But I think the QR card could be a compromise, like a voluntary contribution, if it was very obvious that it's a town council function here, as opposed to actually having it compulsory and trying to get a mechanism that links into, if you don't pay your 20p, doors don't open up. But I mean, obviously they're the sort of things which I expect will be looked into. So I'm a bit on the fence, but I suppose I could argue either way. I'm not sure, basically, I don't know what the frequency of, who's done the surveys about how the frequent, what did I say, the survey on how many people basically use the facilities anyway and its current times. I don't know where we are, and I wouldn't know exactly how many times the 4 main cubicles are going to be opened up and so on. So there's all that to be looked at. I don't know if there's another indication about ongoing costs, because obviously the doors are external. At the moment, the cubicles are basically inside, aren't they? So they are protected from up to a point with the weather, the current elements. But because it's all basically from the outside, I don't know if that's been costed as well. I'm sure that has somewhere. Thank you.
Councillor Meek and then Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't support the idea of payment. It's impractical. If the disabled toilets are able to be used by the public anyway, that makes a mockery of charging for the ones that are specifically for the ordinary members of the public, and people who haven't got any money will just use the disabled ones anyway when they should be paying, so it makes a complete mockery of it, I think. There was some idea, I thought, that the whole cleaning process was going to be subsidised by the concession anyway. So why aren't we just pursuing that and just don't do the financial thing? The other thing is that we did have an idea, I believe, that we had looked at increasing the footprint with the idea of incorporating that other concession. I would urge that we don't look at that. I think that is going to go beyond our budget. I think we need to concentrate on just getting the toilets built with this new concession. The old concession can still function. It's just a kind of takeaway thing with a hatch. Why can't we just leave it like it is? I think it's probably a bridge too far to try and make this an even bigger project. So let's just keep it downscaled to what we think we can afford with the lottery, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Payne.
Just going back to the QR code, when we was talking about South Barn, it was costing 23 pence for every time they used it. So if they only pay 20 pence, it's costing us 3 pence every time they spend a penny.
Yep, that's fair.
That puts a whole new line on spending a penny, actually.
Yes, we'll spend money to make money.
Anyone else want to speak?
Okay.
No, I think that's all of it. So the first is a motion to add. We'll continue with all councillors, and we're saying that's already accepted by the proposing of it.
A typo.
Now, with the water supply and the with mains and wastewater and charging for toilets, I wonder whether that's something we could leave with our officers and consultant rather than put it to a vote tonight. It's up to
we're happy to
it's up to the people who proposed it, but it's within your right to propose and have it seconded and get it voted on as an amendment. But we can also it's also within our choice here to say we believe this could be taken as part of what we're asking officers and consultants to do while we have a meeting. So the first one was Councillor Brown about charging. Would you want to put that as an amendment or leave that into an officer decision later on? Amendment, okay. And the water supply and the wastewater supply, an amendment, okay. Let's go with, I think those are the two amendments then.
Yeah, so should we take the substantive motion and then the amendments in that order? Does that make sense? So because the two amendments don't affect the motion, making sense. Do you want to take the amendments
I think we need to get amendments
okay,
first.
Let's do the amendments first.
Okay, so the amendment is to the recommendation is, the two recommendations are 1 and 2, and we're going to put to the vote that a nominal charge of 20p be made for nominal charge of 20p be made for the use of the toilets. So someone to second that. No one seconds it, that falls.
So okay.
It's withdrawn.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Okay, this is the second one then. So it's still the same items 1 and 2,
Yeah.
but that there will be a facility to supply mains water to camper vans, caravans, and wastewater taken from their ability to dispose of their waste at the site on a paid-for basis. So is that the proposal? So we're saying that we want to be, the proposal is to be able to sell mains water or to sell potable water to caravanners and people with mobile homes, and to charge them for the disposal of their, I think they call them cassettes. Yeah, so that's proposed. Right. Someone second that. That's seconded twice. So that's the motion with. So there are no other amendments possible now. Simply that we're now voting that it's this proposal as 1 and 2, amended to say that we will supply water and charge for the disposal of waste. So that was proposed and seconded. Say again? As you proposed it.
Yeah, but can we put a caveat depending on cost? Because if it turns out it's going to cost £1,000 to do, then probably we don't want to do it. But if it's only a couple of hundred.
I think that goes to my point that if we leave this to the officers and the consultant. But okay,
maybe the motion could be to explore taking forward this matter or something like that. Yeah.
Councillor Foreman, your motion, would you prepared to accept that way of amending it?
Yeah, okay.
Right.
So a motion there, Councillor Reid. Thank you.
So we have the recommendations 1 and 2, and the amendment is that we would, and as part of it, we would explore the opportunities to supply water, to sell water, and charge for the disposing of cassettes. Yeah. Okay, so you want to speak, or you've got?
If I don't want to vote for that at all, does that mean I can't vote on this whole 1 and 2, or what happens in that case? I don't think we ought to be considering this at all, so it's against my vote. I want to vote for the proposal to accept the plans as they are.
That's what I was suggesting.
Yes, then you'd have to vote against. You'd have to vote against the amendment.
So then I have to vote against it.
But then we go back to the original motion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you vote down this motion, the original motion comes in. So if you don't want to sell water and dispose of the cassettes, vote against this motion. Yeah. Which will then put the original motion back into play, and we vote for that again. It doesn't take everything down. It's simply, all we do is vote down...
It's good to clarify, Councillor Meek.
Yeah, we vote down the amendment, and then we go back to the recommendations as put.
Sorry.
Councillor Dunn?
Yes, sorry, Mr Mayor. Rather than making number 2 the amendment to cover what Councillor Borman has asked for, don't you just make it an extra motion, like number 3 or number 4 or number 5? Then that way, Councillor Meek can decide not to do that one, but can vote on number 2.
Yeah, but in theory, I think in practice we ought to have motions before the meeting rather than as a motion during a meeting. Advice from officers?
Our standing orders say that it's not standard practice to agree additional motions at a meeting in case councillors don't feel they've had sufficient opportunity to consider the motion. But that means, I think by implication, that if councillors are happy to take this as a motion that they can agree tonight, then there's no reason not to have it as a motion, if that makes sense. So there's a sort of defence in the standing orders to prevent councillors being sort of bounced into anything through additional motions on the night sort of stuff. So that's why the standing orders are framed as they are. But the standing orders do allow councillors to give consent themselves for additional motions. So it sounds like that might be the sensible thing to do, and have a third motion. So we'll do one. We'll do them individually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and make that number 3, as Councillor Dunn is suggesting.
Councillor Meek, you content with that?
Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Good.
So
Chair. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Over to you.
Right. So we're going to. Item 1 is to note the report. Item 2 is to approve the presented plans as they're designed to take forward for rebuilding the Martella toilets, changing places facility, noting work will continue with all councillors, officers and the consultant to take the project forward. And then we'll have a recommendation 3, which will be about supply of water and disposal.
Shall we take the vote on 1 and 2?
Yeah, 1 and 2, then we go to 3. So we're simply voting now for what's the recommendation as written in agenda item number 4, report 6421, with a simple amendment to say all councillors.
Yeah.
So someone propose that? Councillor Meek, Councillor Olivia Honeyman. Okay, that's those in favour of that, the first 2. Anyone against?
That's unanimous.
Anyone abstaining? That's unanimous. Okay, we now come to the new number 3.
Yeah.
Now, Town Clerk, would you like to propose some words for this?
So it's to explore the feasibility of enabling the provision of water and wastewater for camper vans and other users. I'm getting a nod for Councillor Bourman, so that's
might be wastewater disposal rather than supplying wastewater.
Yeah, all right. Wastewater, water, wastewater and wastewater disposal. Okay, thank you, Councillor Reid, but I think that gives us a motion.
Right, so Councillor Bourman, you're proposing that?
Yeah.
That's a pain. Seconding that,
okay.
we put that to the vote. So those in favour?
We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you. Okay.
Is that carried?
Should we do the against? I want to be sure.
Okay, those against? And I'm abstaining.
Okay, I make that carried 9 to 5.
Right, so that motion is carried 9 to 5. So that is carried.
Okay, now we need to do 4 and 5, Chair.
Yeah, so 3 and 4 are now 4 and 5. So this new 4 is to approve these plans for submission to the National Lottery for part of the funds for the project. And number 5, to approve these plans for submission to Lewis District Council for planning permission. So again, before... Say again?
So we can take them together.
Yes, together. But before we go to the vote, does anyone want to say anything about this, or should we just simply move to vote on it?
I think we can move to vote.
Right, okay, I've proposed that for the chair. Someone second that?
Yeah.
Councillor Payne. All those in favour?
Okay, that's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
That's unanimous and that's carried. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Now we're moving back to the agenda. If we got back to item 12.
Yeah.
Item 12 is on page 38 of the agenda pack.
Yeah.
And this is strategic planning 22-27.
Yeah.
Adam, as the presenting officer, do you want to say anything to introduce
I'm happy
this?
to introduce this. Thank you, Chair. Just need to scroll down far enough to...
I'm sorry, we need to have one meeting. You're welcome to carry on the discussion just outside, but we can't have a discussion at the back. Sorry.
Thank you, Giles.
Yeah, Town Clerk.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm very excited about this report because this gives us all a fantastic opportunity to look to the future as well as the past and the present. And as it says within the report, I've very carefully set out the steps that I think need to be followed to enable us to have the best quality plan for the council going forward for the years 2022 to 2027. So basically, I've set out the process, the actions we need to take within this municipal year for the plan to be agreed in time for the new municipal year, and then how we'll go about that. And as I've said, the key things to do, as it says within the report, one is to gather feedback from key stakeholders and residents of the town about the priorities. I've explained in the report how we can do that. Secondly, is to reflect on the fact that the councillors agreed a plan in 2016 for 5 years. So councillors will be given the opportunity to see if there's any outstanding matters from that plan they wish to carry forward or not, as the case may be. But that's a matter for yourselves. You'll be given that opportunity to say, well, the thing that was agreed for 2016, we still haven't done it, but we still like to take that forward. Or you can say, well, a lot has changed, obviously, since 2016, not least COVID. So we may decide that actually these new priorities are what we now to move forward to. As councillors, you'll have the opportunity to decide that. And then once we've done the necessary consultation, liaison, and also reviewing of past plans, we'll be in a position to come together, to work together on the priorities going forward. So I hope that gives everyone a clear explanation of the exciting few months ahead that I think will really help us as a council to have a really strong plan for the 5 years going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone want to ask questions of this as we move into Councillor Payne?
I like the idea of this, but shouldn't it be aligned to the elections? Because we're doing a 5-year plan that come the next election, the next lot of councillors might totally disagree with it, but they're stuck with it because that's our plan.
Ken Clark?
I think that's a very fair point, and it might be that when you come to do the plan, you might think about how you might do it as a staged way. So it might be some of the parts that you would have to want to have re-adopted after the election in 2023. I completely take your point, but I feel that we can't wait another nearly 2 years to make our plans, because our current plans are now out of date, and it's having impact upon our capabilities as a council to not have our plans updated.
Yes, I think if you look at the Town Council website, you'll see quite how outdated some of our plans are at the moment. Yes. So we do need to move on the updating. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It appears to me that there's an enormous amount of work involved here, and I congratulate the Town Clerk on what he's done so far. Therefore suggest that we probably set up a working group to deal with this and then feed that back to councillors, particularly where we're interfacing with members of the public. I think you need more people doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to consider that as well. I think that's a helpful suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. I think now, if no more comments, we can move this to take the recommendations. The recommendation 1 is to note the report, and recommendation 2 to confirm it wishes to update the Town Council's strategic objectives, including gathering feedback from local people, groups and key stakeholders, confirming which parts of the previous plan to take forward, convening to work together on new objectives. So that's the recommendation. Someone like to propose that? Councillor Borman, come second that. Councillor Rutland. Okay, those in favour?
Yeah.
That's unanimous.
Thank you, Chair.
That's carried. Thank you. Now we're moving on to item 13. And this is the street market feedback. And just to say, this is specifically feedback about this particular street market, not street markets in general. Yeah. Town Clerk, are you presenting this? Or?
Yeah, I'm happy to present. I'm sure Tony will add anything that I overlook. But I think the Sharon and Tony's report, I think, gives a very clear position that this matter appropriately came before our Community Services Committee. We asked the proposer, Miranda, to undertake the necessary work to identify the views within the town on how this can be taken forward and put other plans and necessary steps in place. And what this report does is to come back to councillors on the work that's taken place since that Community Services Committee, including the results of that consultation, which are within the appendix, and I think, as you've seen, make very interesting reading. But as I think, as we're clear as officers, that the majority, there's far more positives than negatives from that feedback. So we think this does put us in a position to be able to take this market forward. And so that is the recommendation within the report tonight. We've also covered details about financial appraisal in terms of a small amount of income being earned from this work. But the fundamental is the strong partnership working between the officers and the proposer to make the consultation possible, and also cover all the other arrangements around health and safety, insurance, etc. But with that work being complete, we now feel in a position to recommend to councillors that this market takes place, and that's the motion before you this evening. Thank you.
Does anyone ask a comment or question? Councillor Olivia Honeyman, Councillor Walraven.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to Miranda, because obviously being chair of community, I was quite concerned about the market. And I'm really impressed, and I'm really glad that you've gone through and done this so thoroughly. So I really want to say thank you very much, because I felt much happier having read, and this was a real report in the fact you'd spoken to the people, and I know it was a real report, but it just, you can tell you've spoken to the people. So I'm really happy they've done that. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Walraven.
I just really wanted to echo what Councillor Honeyman has just said. There's a lot of work has gone, Miranda's done with this, and how she's trying to connect the market to the town centre. And the one thing I do like about this market, there is no generators, and I think this, as a town council, we should look into that for future markets, and I wish this market all the success. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walraven.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dunn.
Can I just know when the first market's going to start? Have we got a start date? Thank you.
Town Clerk.
Is it sorry, remind me if it's within the report.
Tony. When's the start date? Can't hear. It's the 11th of September.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay, should we go to the vote on this? Yes.
Councillor Brown wants to speak, Chair.
Councillor Brown.
At the moment, we have the French and the German markets that come into Seaford. I can't quite remember what day they're on. Will its impact on the street market at the moment, or are they on separate days?
Town Clerk.
Our understanding is that there isn't a clash with other markets for this proposal.
Okay, let's move on then. So the recommendation to approve the street market taking place within Church Street for a trial period of up to 3 months, noting the delegated power to officers in consultation with the Chair of Community Services to grant a yearly licence subject to a successful trial. So you want to speak to this? Councillor Richard Honeyman.
Sorry about that later. I suddenly thought of something. Relating to the refrigeration of some of the stalls, is that not relevant in this scenario? Or so that's one question, because obviously if you haven't got generators, I assume that's to keep the things cool, maybe lighting. I'm not sure what equipment they're using. At what category would they cancel? They wouldn't go into Clinton Place or anything like that, into the hall there, like they used to on the previous market. If the weather was very inclement, they started going indoors. That's not linked up this occasion. No. So there's two questions there, really.
No.
I think we're inferring that if there's no power supply, there's no need for power on the site, and it would all be in the street, because it's on Church Street, not up near the Clinton Centre.
Yeah. So the lighting, you're just relying on the lighting in the. Yeah.
It's a daylight market, as I understand it.
So hopefully it'll all be concluded before anything gets dark. So it should be done 3 or 4 o'clock, the latest sort of thing.
Solar lanterns.
Okay, thank you.
I think the recommendation is we give it a 3-month trial. Sorry, I can't let you speak. Sorry. I think we give it a 3-month trial. Then we'll know how we stand.
All right, thank you.
I think on the basis what we're saying is we recommend a 3-month trial. At the end of that, we could go to 12 months if we need to, when we can.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's a trial.
So on that trial basis, and with having heard what's just been said, someone propose this? Councillor Hyder, someone second this? Councillor Olivia Honeyman. Okay, those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
That's carried. Okay, now we're going on to the Assets Working Group Part 2. Adam, you want to introduce this?
Yeah, I'll rattle on if that's okay with everybody. This is the sequel to the previous meeting. So the report, as the report sets out, it mirrors the report that I brought to the previous full council meeting in June, where again I commend the work of the Assets Working Group and the officers supporting it for their diligence in going through our asset register and enabling all of our assets to be grouped into the 6 groups as described within the report. At the previous meeting, we considered and approved outcomes for each of the assets in 3 of the groups, and then in this meeting, we're doing the remainder for the remaining 3 groups. And again, as per the last meeting, there's a table that I will now take you through. Also, as I've said within the report, mindful of neighbourhood planning documents, and also I'm very grateful he's here this evening to speak on another item for the work of our planning officer, Jeff, who supported this work so ably, and I thank him for that. So basically, the Group 2 is the groups we're doing are Groups 2, 5 and 6, which as you can see, Group 2 is to investigate sale of land to immediate neighbours. Group 5, to consider in 2022, in other words, take a staged approach to the resolution of matters with our assets. And then Group 6, though, is assets where officers in the group can't see a sensible thing that we need to do at the moment or in the foreseeable future. So they're grouped into those matters. And as I say, I've explained a bit more about each of the groups within the report. I'm going to now go on to the asset list, and I'm going to do it exactly the same as I did last time, which I'll briefly go down the list, and then if councillors have any questions or points or have a different recommendation for any of the assets, we'll consider these as we go. And then once we get to the end of the report, we'll go back and pass the motion so that the amended version of the report can be agreed tonight.
And just to be clear, we're all in the same place. This is pages 51 to 54 we're going to work through now.
I hope so, Rodney. I hope so. Yes, absolutely.
So if you want to follow, you need to follow pages 51 to 54. So back to you, Adam.
Okay, so the first one is the small plot at the Holt, and as the work group have considered, although the neighbourhood plan has explored the possibility of this being sold to be developed as a single dwelling, the view of the group and officers on careful consideration is the size of the plot is probably too small for this, and so they are putting forward the alternative recommendation, which is to explore with neighbouring residents if any of them would like to take the space on for storage and garage facilities. Okay, so does anyone want to ask or question or query or disagree with any of that? Councillor Meek.
Thank you, Chair. Just would like to say that I've heard from quite a few residents in North Way that they were very upset when the other part of the Holt plot was sold for building development, because they'd been told that originally those 2 bits of land were going to be secured for the local public and they weren't going to be built on. So just to point out that if you do want to put it for a garage and sell it to somebody for a garage, there might be quite a lot of kickback from people who actually do value it just as a green space as it is with a tree in the middle of it.
Sure. No, I think that's a fair point. Thank you, Councillor Meek. Councillor Bowman.
Yeah, thank you. Although you say that it can only be for maybe a size of a garage, if the neighbourhood plan says that it's for a small house, if you sell it to a neighbouring resident, what's to say that they're not going to put in planning permission for another house on that property? I know, obviously, local residents, they can object to it and everything, but if it's in the neighbourhood plan for a property, then the likelihood is that they could build a property on it and then obviously make a lot more money.
Okay, again, that's a fair point, Councillor Warman. Again, I would expect us to be clear in terms of the arrangements we would make with the residents about, about what may or may not be possible going forward. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move, if there's no more comment, I think those are comments, then I think we need to be mindful of those comments in terms of how this is taken forward. But I'm going to move on then to, again, the small strip of land opposite Blatchington Pond. And again, as is described within the report, the nature of this land, again, we think could lend itself to neighbours potentially taking it on. Does anyone want to ask or say anything about that one? Okay, and then Sutton Drove junction of byways, similar small plot with nearby housing. Again, we need to proceed carefully in terms of the fact there's a substation on site, so we need to obviously make sure necessary access is guaranteed for any change in arrangement. Also, as the report notes, is if this piece of land, if no one is interested in taking this piece of land on, then I think it would lend itself for use by a community group for green space or climate emergency activities as like a second stage if the first stage doesn't happen. Questions, comments, etc. on that item at all? Okay, so let's keep going. Item 5, so we're moving into group 5, which are the ones which are basically more work is needed in next year, again working with asset group and officers. First of all is Firle Close, a small plot surrounded by 15 houses. I think it's fair to say that some stakeholders who've spoken to the council take the view that with the piece of land entirely surrounded by 15 houses, it's sensible to see if the residents would like to take that on. But I think that's quite a substantive piece of work to do for that number of people and that amount of space. So that's why we're putting it into the 2022 list to consider if that can be taken forward. Land at the end of Morris Road, an unused piece of land. So again, we anticipate next year discussing with South Downs National Park any potential uses for that land that may be appropriate, with them being the planning authority. The old town hall, again, the group want to look at this some more. We have current licensees. Sorry, Councillor Cash, did you wish to speak?
This one.
Did you wish to speak?
On Morris Road, yeah.
Please do. Sorry, please excuse me, rambling on.
It says here the unused land between the houses and golf course, any plans likely to be opposed strongly by residents. They certainly are, because we've had representations to South Ward councillors already about this, asking to see plans, etc., and explain. And I've explained to them there aren't any plans yet, but that I would pass on to you at this meeting that they're already looking forward to discussing this with you when it comes back to council next year. So it will be vehemently, I think, opposed. And to say that because it's an unmade up road, there are also issues that need to be looked into, drainage and things which are already poor in that area. But I've explained to them that it's not on our agenda tonight, but that I would express to you their concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Cash. And it's as you say, we've noticed it in the report, but it's definitely true. Absolutely. Councillor Dunn.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would it be worth considering, the council, to change it from instead of group 5 to group 3, that we technically offer it to the residents that are upset that it could be built on? I mean, I don't know if that's worth considering. Thank you.
Okay. I think my view would be that as we're saying this is going to be the 2022 agenda item for the Assets Working Group, the Assets Working Group may decide to make it a Group 3 item at that point. I don't think they need to make that decision this evening. I think we could do it through the Assets Working Group when they reconsider it. But I think it's a completely fair point, and we'll make sure we look at that carefully with the group for this matter. Okay, sorry, councillors. Sorry, Councillor Cash. Councillor Meek.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you, Town Clerk. Could I go back to Firle Close, which we didn't get a chance to discuss? When I was given the plans of what Seaford Town Council owned, it was definitely marked in red that was a Seaford Town Council holding Firle Close. Yes. So I think I'm quite surprised to find that we don't actually know who owns it, because I also think it raised the question of, are we actually paying for the maintenance of it? if we are maintaining it, why we're maintaining it if we don't know we own it. Because I know that, for one thing, there's a huge, great privet hedge in the middle of that, which has to be cut. And there's a you say it's a small plot. It's not a small plot. It's a large piece of ground, in fact, with a lot of trees on it, which also will be a responsibility. So I think I would say that finding out who actually owns it is really rather important. Thank you.
I don't disagree, Councillor. As I said, we'll make sure that's clearly within the remit of the next stage of that work. Absolutely right. So, completely fair point. Thank you, Councillor. So again, I think we're recording the things for the ASA work group to consider when they come to these items in 2022. So the feedback's really helpful. I'm just going to cover briefly the last two for this group. Old Town Hall, as I say, because of the current arrangements for the Town Hall, including the licensees that we have, it wouldn't be appropriate to look at this stage. So we're putting it onto the pending list for the group to consider for the future. And then Martello Beach Huts, again, this is something for councillors to consider in 2022, whether they wish to undertake any sales of the Martello Beach Huts that we currently rent out, or whether they wish to continue to rent them out. Given there are pros and cons to that argument, that's something that councillors will need to consider more properly as a separate item, and the proposal is to do that in 2022 next year. That's everything in Group 5. And then Group 6, I'm actually going to take them together. Because they're the no further action ones, I basically would like to say to councillors, does any councillor wish to put forward any arguments for taking these out of Group 6? Councillor Lord.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Town Clerk. Thank you, councillors. Not necessarily taking over Group 6. It's the fact that the covers, which is the rewilding, originally was told as regreening. We're now going to rewilding. The two are completely and utterly different characteristics. To rewild it in English natural flowers, etc., you need to excavate at least a foot deep and get rid of the existing. So it has to be cut down to the wire, take all the grass off it, then it has to be rotavated to at least a foot deep, then reseeded with English natural flowers. That is a massive job.
Yeah.
And it's very expensive.
Okay.
Has to be maintained very, very carefully and managed, cut at the beginning of the year and cut at the end of the year, and all the grass taken away. Most important thing, I live there, all the neighbours absolutely hate my guts because I said to them, don't worry about it, it's going to be a nice English meadow, don't worry about things. You can't do what you're doing now just by leaving it. It's been trimmed around the edges and left. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. It prevents any natural growth coming up. The reason I know this is because I'm actually rewilding about 30 acres of English natural seeds, etc., and it's costing an absolute fortune. May I suggest, to get the neighbours off my back, I'm eventually going to come on to your back because I've been shielding everybody in the town council, that we just put it on a normal cutting maintenance with ID Verde, whoever you have now doing your grass. Just cut it, because you can't do what you want to do without spending a lot of money. And you spend a little bit of money, it'll get all the neighbours off my back, give the town council a good name, because all they're saying to me is, oh, it's just the way the town council's saying, there's money not cutting the grass. And I get so much stick almost every single day. And I think it would be better for everybody if you just said, look, just put on a normal cutting routine, because the Martello fields are cut on a regular basis. They're not cut correctly, but I'm not going into that. But if we could just have the two fields either side of the covers, just cut as they cut the Martello, we will then be maintaining what we were supposed to do. Trying to return to rewilding is a massive, expensive task. And I think we should be very careful what we say, because if that goes out in the public domain, that we're actually rewilding it, we're not doing that. That's going to cost a lot of money. So if you just consider that, and perhaps next year, just put a normal cutting routine, and just say, it's just going to be cut. And it'll save everybody a lot of hassle. Really, really well. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Lord.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Again, that's useful feedback to take into discussions with LDC and ID Verde about the green spaces that we're talking about. So those comments are carefully noted. I think we've been clear with residents that that where we're either regreening or rewilding spaces this year, it is a trial to learn from. and we'll be learning lessons from it and then deciding what to do with the spaces going forward based on the lessons that we learned from this year. So that feedback's very helpful to help to inform that process. So discussions will continue. Okay, thank you, Councillor Lord. With those comments noted, I think I've captured the amendments, and George would have captured within the minutes the amendments to this report that councillors wish to see, in which case I think we're ready, Chair, to consider it.
Can we just be clear about Blatchington Pond and Avondale Road?
Yes, Councillor Reid, what do you want to ask?
Everybody's saying this is a no further action point.
Yeah, I've just said these are all NFAs unless councillors
All the
say
NFAs
so.
together?
Yeah, I've taken them all together.
Okay.
Councillor Honeyman wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Officially, I think the Sunken Garden was renamed the Beach Garden by the Seaford Community Partnerships. I don't know what's the official title.
Okay.
So
that's a very good point.
A nickname was Sunken Garden because it is sunk, isn't it? At that stage, but I think it's. I think
down to get into it, but yeah.
I think I think it did when they did the project of the Beach Garden. They did rename it Beach Garden. I'm pretty sure it's that. So you may want to check that through.
That's a good point. We'll make sure it's corrected in the minutes. Thank you, Councillor Honeyman.
Okay, so we come back to
I think I'm ready to pass to you to
recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay, so full council has recommended 1, to note the report, 2, to consider the list of assets in Appendix A and confirm or amend the recommendations in each case, which we've worked through, and to ask the assets group the assets working group to reconvene in 2022 to consider the assets agreed as being considered in this year, as well as any other relevant matters relating to the council's assets in that year. Someone propose that?
Thank you.
Councillor Payne, someone second that? Councillor Cash? Those in favour? That's carried.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we're going on to item 15. We're now on page 55. Adam, do you want to lead off on this?
Yes. Let me just do a bit of scrolling, Councillor Reid, and I'll be right with you. So I'm grateful to Councillor Dunn for putting these proposals forward. And I hope that within the report, the key points have been captured in terms of the points Councillor Dunn wishes to make. And also within the report, there's clarity about actions that are currently being taken on some of these matters, while noting that further actions may well be necessary. The motion is very clear in terms of asking councillors to consider the points within the report and based upon what they've seen within the report, what recommendations do they wish to make about any further actions to take. Okay. Councillor Dunn, would you wish to speak to this at all?
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the reason I brought this to us, and I thank you to the staff, our staff, Adam, for allowing this to go on tonight's meeting, is because I've lived here 11 years, and every year we do suffer some form of antisocial behaviour. And it has got progressively worse with COVID. And every year, without fail, the residents that live in and around the seafront contact me very upset that their gardens are used as toilets, that people damage their property. They have great big camper vans parking right outside their homes, blocking their entrances. And I've never felt anything could be done about it. I know we talked to Lewis District, but we seem to only talk. So I really wanted tonight to be about what action can we take and a minute to go forward to address some of the issues. With my list, A, litter and overflowing bins. I know Tony has been speaking with Lewis District regarding possibly an extra bins being emptied. So instead of 2, we have 3, possibly later on in the day, so that no litter is left overnight. And also maybe to roll out larger bins for the summer only. I know Tony's been in liaison with Lewis District, if we could have an update on that. The other thing was, mainly, because I sent to all councillors and staff, regarding the overnight sleeping, that the signages that we've got at the moment is very ambiguous. And the reason is because the signs, as I pointed out in the email, the sign states no camping or sleeping. But then above it, it then says that they can stay for 12 hours. Well, if you turned up at 8 o'clock in the evening, stayed on the seafront overnight and left the following morning between 7 and 8, you've technically stayed within the 12 hours. So I find that very ambiguous and feel every time I've travelled around the country to not allow overnight sleeping or camping, that they stipulate a time. So nothing beyond 8 p.m. or nothing beyond 9, so that there's no possibly misinterpretation of the sign. I really would like to make the proposal tonight that our officers contact whoever put the sign in, I think it's East Sussex County Council, to change the wording so it's much more clearer and cannot be misunderstood. And the same with speaking to our parking authority regarding the turning point at the end of Splash Point. All the two disabled parking there is used up by people abusing the spaces that don't have blue badges. And also it's meant to be kept as clear as possible because it's a turning point for vehicles and it gets terribly blocked. And then regarding College Road, which I brought up at last council's, full council, was the fact that we really need to put double yellow lines between the two Martello fields to prevent people causing an obstruction to emergency vehicles. But if we can go ahead with those double yellow lines, we must put in lines on the pavement so that nobody can park there, not even blue badge holders. I mean, they're just some of the things I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunn. We're certainly looking for recommendations coming from councillors in response to this report. So in the further information section, there's what officers have shown to us, actions that have been taken, and the intention to bring back a report about the parking of camper vans later in the year, or to full council later in the year. I wonder at some point where you may have to think about about local bylaws. Anyone else want to make any particular recommendations about things that could be done differently, could be done better? Councillor Lord.
Yeah, this is a bit naughty, this, but I'll tell you the truth. We've just voted to say we're going to allow provision for caravans and camper vans to their facilities and a new toilet. And then on the other hand, we're saying, well, actually, we don't want to stop here. So we can't have it both ways. So if we're making provisions for a toilet for emptying cassettes and water, that means they can stop there. And then we're saying on the other hand, actually, we're going to bring bylaws in which says they can't stop there. So we've got to be pretty consistent and say whether do one thing or the other. Thank you.
Okay, point made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Any other? Councillor Brown.
Looking at section 2.2, particularly number A and number I about the rubbish bins, I think I was on holiday recently in a place very similar to Seaford. Don't know why I went there, but there you go. And we did find out while we were there that they had some very big bins on the seafront which would take about 3 times as much rubbish as our current ones. Also, beside those bins, they had a big metal container which was marked barbecues. And people were putting their barbecues into that container and it wouldn't cause any fires. I think maybe that might be a consideration that we could perhaps look at. On the subject of camper vans parking, I think about 3 or 4 years ago the council did look at if they could provide some parking for camper vans and caravans for overnight. I don't think that anything came of it, but as the council Lord has already said, you know, you can't stop people parking and then expect them to use the toilets to dispose of their waste. So I think that the council should look very carefully at providing some overnight accommodation for camper vans and caravans.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other comments, recommendations? Tony Jackson.
Thank you, Tony.
Just give you a bit of an update about the bins. Lewes District Council were supposed to install a super bin, that they call it, near to Frankie's Beach Cafe. I chased it up this week because I hadn't heard anything for a month or so, and apparently either the wrong bins were ordered or the wrong bins were delivered. So it's probably not going to happen this year. The horse has already bolted, but this was supposed to be a huge bin with recycling and also with litter pickers as well, for people who can just take them and do litter picking. So hopefully next year that'll be in place. With regard to a third extra pick per day during the summer season, busy season, it will be something that will have to be budgeted for if we want to do it, because it's above and over what we have. But it is something I can look into for next year and see whether we can put a budget in for it. I do something similar with the salts in the summer holidays. I have extra picks over the weekend, but that's easy because it's done by ID Verdi, so we can just pay them directly to do extra picks. But with Lewis District Council, it's not that easy. So yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Really helpful. Brilliant.
So I think that's the end of the comments and recommendations then.
Yeah, so I think those recommendations are all noted. Georgia would have captured those within the minutes, so we'll be taking those forward. So I think we are in a position now to move forward on the motions.
So we put these recommendations to the meeting then?
Yeah, together.
Yeah. Okay, I think so. So the recommendations are to consider and discuss the motion put forth regarding antisocial behaviour in the seafront, other open spaces, make recommendations of actions for the town council and or other stakeholders to take. Someone propose that?
Proposed? Yeah.
Councillor Olivia Honeyman. Well, I suppose that Councillor Dunnett, it was yours to start with. I think maybe you'll propose it.
Check something, sorry. Can I not put the proposal in that we contact East Sussex County Council regarding the signage? Do I need to make that as a proposal?
I think that's covered under number 2 about recommendations of actions. You're just describing one of the actions that's being recommended.
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't think it needs a separate motion because there's other actions within the report that's been taken. So in a nutshell, you've set forward, the council's raised some points tonight plus what's within the report. We've explained the steps already been taken, but it's understood from the motion that other matters will be followed up, including the points you've raised tonight.
Oh, okay, right, thank you. Yeah, I'll second that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think you can propose it or second it. I think propose it as you brought it forward. Councillor Olivia Honeyman can second it. Councillor Richard Honeyman.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. Patrolling of the seafront, that's generally, I noticed that the town council does, it says regular patrols when you can. District council does regular patrols when they can. Do you ever get PCSOs along the front or anything? Is that covered as part of their patrols?
We do liaise with the police about what they're able to do with the resources they have available, and they do their best. So, for example, when there were the thefts from the beach huts earlier in the year, they undertook additional patrols, and following on from that, the relevant behaviours came to an end. So the police do what we can. We work with them to do all we can, within the resources that they have.
Do you want to mention PCSO in here somehow? Or increase patrols somehow? I don't know. Or is that covered anyway?
Yeah, okay, we can make sure, again, within the minutes that we're making sure we're working with PCSOs to do all they can as well. I think that's a fair point.
Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's proposed and seconded, needs to be voted on. Those in favour?
Yeah.
Councillor Brown, are you voting? I think that's unanimous. Yeah. Yes, thank you.
That's
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We come on to item 16, Standing Orders Review, and we're now working on pages 58 to 81. Town Clerk.
Thank you, Chair, but most of all, thank you to Georgia for the amazing work she's done to put this together. And I also want to thank all of you for the feedback and from the feedback that we've had. I think that it's been, even though we're getting quite late into this meeting now, I want to take a minute just to say I want to thank you. I think that, again, that's a really positive process. These standing orders are massively important, so you taking the time to review them and put forward amendments to them is actually a really important thing to have done. I think, as his report says, we think this process is now complete for this current municipal year, and therefore the amendments are within the body of the report. George has explained them within the report introduction and then shown them in terms of the track change version that's been attached to you. So as officers, we're now able to recommend these revised standing orders to this meeting tonight. Thank you.
And just to reinforce the fact that the point that I've just made, there's been a lot of councillor input to this to get to this point. So I'm assuming there's not much to add to this at this stage, given the opportunities to contribute earlier. But if you do need to make an input now, there's an opportunity. But I think there's a lot of councillor input already into this. Does anybody have anything they want to add at this point? Councillor Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to say that I was one of the councillors that did submit. I was one of the councillors that did submit amendments, and I just want to thank the staff, Georgia, and the rest of the staff for taking those on board and feeding them into the standing orders. It was yeah, I'm really pleased. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think if the minutes could show the councillors' thanks to the officers.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that means we can go to the recommendations. I don't see anybody else asking to speak. So the recommendation is full council is recommended to consider and to adopt the revised standing orders as presented with this report. Someone propose that? Councillor Dunn, seconded Councillor Brown. Okay, all those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank
Unanimous, thank you. Now we go on to item 17. We're on to page 82, and this is the Lewis local plan issues and options consultation. Town Clerk or Jeff?
I think you'll all be relieved to hear you don't have to listen to me for a minute, because you must be getting a bit fed up by now. So I'm delighted to hand over to our planning officer, Jeff Johnson. Thank you, Jeff.
It's very difficult to condense all the issues and options set out in this document into a sort of reasonable length debate. So we did circulate all the relevant information and the policy document to all councillors as soon as the consultation period started in July, asking for feedback. And it was discussed at Planning and Highways Committee, who did give their feedback, which is set out in the report, but I've not received any other feedback from individual members. So there's quite a lot to go through. I'll try and condense it, given the time factor. The Planning and Highways Committee responded really on the main issue, the main controversial issue in the consultation document, which was question of housing and where the increased housing requirement of 782 houses should be located and the different options for locating it. As you can see in the report, the Planning and Highways Committee's comments on that were that firstly, due weight should be given to allocations in the neighbourhood plan as they've been specifically supported by local residents. That development in Seaford, as we all know, is severely constrained by the national park and the sea. That many of Seaford's brownfield sites have been developed already. Remaining green spaces are limited and already protected. And also, recently, additional protection has been given through national policy guidance to sites adjoining the national park. So there's very little scope for further development within Seaford and any sort of meaningful contributions towards this 782 homes per year, which the government has imposed on the district. Also, some of the allocated sites in the neighbourhood plan and local plan for residential development have not been developed as yet, and also the restrictions of developments close to the seafront due to the high flood risk area. So that should form, in my view, the basis for the town council's response to the local plan. Because the biggest issue, obviously, is this increase in the housing delivery requirement from 345 to 782 houses. And at the same time, I've drawn members' attention to the resolution of the District Council back in June, which some will obviously already be aware of going to the government to try and persuade it to alter the method of assessment for housing delivery for districts because of the particularly severe impact on Lewis District of this massive increase in housing delivery. So members also consider lending their support to that resolution of Lewis District Council as local planning authority. As I say, the resolution is also set out in the papers in front of you. The other issues which the committee highlighted were the fact that the A259 is struggling to deal with current demands, that it will imminently have traffic from an additional 184 dwellings at Newlands, which will worsen the situation, and that the town's other infrastructure will struggle to cope with the increase in population. And generally within the district there was concern at how the rural villages could cope with the new housing delivery requirement and that it would change the character of a lot of the villages. And the obvious fact that if the housing delivery requirement remains as it is, the evidence already shows that it will require one or more new settlements of maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 dwellings. One has already been mooted and there's moves to get the site at East Chiltington for 3,000 dwellings within the local plan. And that probably, given the restrictions of the district and the fact that it's over half of the district is designated as being within the national park, it'll probably require an additional settlement like that to meet the increased requirement. So that's another issue that will have to be faced. And as far as the rest of the plan's concerned, I don't want to go on too long. I mean, it will take an hour or so to go through all the points in there. So I've picked out some of the highlights, if you like. One of them, on climate change, the main objective of the plan is, and of the District Council, is for net zero, to be a net zero carbon council and district by 2030, to provide more affordable social housing is another objective of the council and of the plan, and to get more developer contributions for infrastructure. There are a lot of other objectives on regarding climate change. For example, should local plans or neighbourhood plans be responsible for allocating sites specifically for climate change purposes, e.g. solar farms? And should the District Council require small or large-scale developments to provide energy generation within the schemes, as opposed to relying on outside sources? On affordable housing, the question posed is, should affordable housing a proportion of affordable housing be required on developments of more than 10 dwellings or on all dwellings? How affordable housing should be split between rented accommodation and shared ownership, which were questions which came up on the Newlands scheme. And several other issues which members may already have taken in, the need for local labour agreements, that is for major planning schemes to be subject to Section 106 planning agreements, requiring the contractors to use a proportion of local labour, local firms in the construction, which Eastbourne already have adopted. Whether more employment space is needed, whether more retail space is needed in the town. whether payments of the infrastructure levy or whatever replaces it from the government should be spent on more affordable housing or enhanced carbon reduction in the district, other issues like that. So and finally, one of the more interesting issues is, should all development be restricted to areas that are within either 10 minutes or 20 minutes of rail, bus services, schools, open spaces, sports facilities, etc. That's 10 or 20 minutes travel time by foot or bicycle. So as I say, there's a lot in there, and it's impossible to go through it all. The Planning and Highways Committee have responded on the main points regarding housing and how the district could cope with this massive increase in the housing requirement. But as I say, it's impossible to, well, as you can see in the resolution that's been suggested, it's impossible to agree a detailed response tonight. So what we're asking for is really points and issues which we can turn into a full response, which has to be made by September the 3rd, in addition to the issues which the Planning and Highways Committee have come up with, which we assume will be supported by the full council. If there's any, obviously, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah. And just to say that with the 3rd of September deadline, there's a bank holiday between now and then. There's not much time. So, but I think for me, the key recommendation is recommendation 2 that we're being asked to make and discuss responses. So I think what Jeff is now saying is that are there detailed responses detailed responses to the main issues covered in the consultation that councillors want to make tonight? Councillor Dunn, then Councillor Richard Honeyman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 87, 3.8, regarding this land zoning system, that really worries me. Can we make sure that we put some feedback into that to not agree with this? Because that really seems to completely sort of go against the neighbourhood plan, go against the fact that, you know, under the community, the neighbourhood plan was for the community input on where we want houses built, where we want to protect our green spaces. We're under that in general. And then the government seemed to want to do a complete U-turn and say, no, you've got to build everywhere and anywhere. So can we make sure we feed that back in? Thank you.
So Councillor Dunn, this is about point 3.8 on page 87, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in a way, this is a sort of separate but linked issue. The District Council have had to start off this procedure because the local plan is overdue. They've had to start it off under the current procedure at a time when the government are proposing to introduce a planning bill to wipe out the procedure. I think that's explained in there. So, but because the planning bill is controversial, like a lot of controversial matters, it's being sat on at the moment. I mean, we should have had the detail of the planning bill out by now. It was one of the very few bits of major legislation mentioned in the Queen's speech. Normally, the timetable is for bills to be issued pretty quickly, but it's being sat on because it's not popular, as we all know from national issues. So Lewis are having to plough on. We can't really. You can object to the planning bill, but this issue really is responses to the local plan as it stands. I mean, I think we have objected to the planning bill, or we have sent in our response to the white paper. The planning bill is probably going ahead, but what's contained in it may be modified because of national issues which have arisen. But it's a question of wait and see, really. and it's nothing that really we can, or members can deal with formally tonight, because we're dealing with the local plan. It's just a very relevant background issue. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with recommendations, responses? Councillor Richard Honeyman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, again. Yes, I think, as you say, we're obviously talking here more and more with a receiver hat on as opposed to the wider district on one level. I think our planning officer has sort of answered some of the, obviously Lewis District have got to sort of progress so far in the context of the revised bill, what's going through. So I'm sure they're trying to progress with what they can and so on. My key question is, I do hope Newland School has been included in some sort of count somewhere along the lines. I know it's not included on our count, but I don't know the latest on that because we call it Winfield, but I'd be upset in one level if it was the count quota there is not included on anyone's count. So I don't know if Jeff wants the answer to that. Thank you.
So is the Newland School building counted in the 345 or 782 or?
It was counted in the 345, I think, when permission was granted, but it was counted as a windfall rather than an allocated site, which was, as I say, slightly ridiculous because windfalls are usually 2, 3 or 4 dwellings in redevelopments. But because it wasn't included in the 2015 local plan, or 2016 local plan, because permission was granted after that, but permission has been granted too early for it to be included in this local plan, it is counted as a windfall towards the 345 figure, which expired in May of this year, when the 5-year 2016 plan expired, and the new housing delivery requirement took over as from May.
Okay, thank you. Can we move to recommendations now?
Hold on, Councillor Brown.
Councillor Brown, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Can I propose a slight amendment to item 3? Give delegated authority to the Town Clerk in consultation with the Mayor, Chair of Planning and Highways, and the Planning Officer, because I think he's probably going to do most of the work anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're Town Clerk is saying that's an acceptable amendment. So. Okay.
As long as the planning officer doesn't mind, that's all good.
So let's move that then. So the Council has recommended to note the report, to make and discuss responses to the main issues covered in the consultation, and to give delegated authority to the Town Clerk in consultation with the Mayor, Chair of Planning and Highways Committee, the Council Planning Officer, and in order to submit the final response to Lewis District Council based on feedback received from councillors. Someone propose that? Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Borman. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous, thank you, that's carried. Now, I promised you a comfort break at 9 o'clock. And there's a fair number of issues.
We've got a bit to do. We've got too much to do to not have a break, but I don't think we've got too much to do after the break.
Yeah, I'm hopeful we'll be finished well before 9:30. So a 5-minute break, and the facilities are outside, and those who need to smoke, the facilities are even further outside. Okay, we're coming on to item 18, and we're now on page 91. Town Clerk, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. As ever, my scrolling is less quick than your chairing, I'm afraid, so I'll just get down to page 91. Just take a minute.
So we're seeking
This is
to
about the
steer
meeting
in decisions,
arrangements.
yes.
And I want to again thank George, our Executive Support Officer, for all of our hard work to make these things possible and the thoroughness and diligence of the attached report. We've deliberately gone into detail within the report to give councillors maximum clarity about the issues to consider around future meetings, but also with suggestions for how to move forward. And those are contained within the body report and then encompassed in the... That's why we have effectively a 9-part motion for the meeting, or effectively 9 motions for the meeting, to make sure we've covered all items to enable the business of council to continue. This includes digital meetings and the benefits of live streaming. It also feeds back on the challenges around the Zoom. Now we have the return to physical meetings, with again a recommendation that we don't think that's necessarily needs to continue now that physical meetings are becoming normalised again. Again, review about most sensible times days to meet, most sensible places to meet, and again we're putting that together in terms of reflecting on the fact that the council chamber in Church Street is a sufficient size, we think, for committees to meet, and therefore they can be restored to Thursdays, because of course that's the evening that councils are regionally set aside for these meetings. But that a full council meeting, we think, is still not sensible to return to our rather small council chamber. It also explains within the report why the View is not in scope for this, essentially because holding meetings at the View conflicts with its business activities, and we need it to generate all the money that it can. So that covers the 3 possible venues that we have and what to take where. That's section 4 of the report. We've also covering meeting timetables moving forward. But as I say, we're covering digital presence recommended going forward, what to do about Zoom going forward, which meetings will meet when, and where we think they can meet. There are some small cost implications to this that are explained during the financial appraisal part of this report. So thank you for your patience, but I think it's important that we're as clear as we can be on these important matters, but I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Handing back to Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're seeking to seek steering decisions from the full council on certain aspects of the town council's meeting and arrangements, and clearly a longish list of recommendations we'll need to come to later on. Before we do that, are there questions of clarification, points to make, queries? Councillor Payne?
You said the View, we couldn't go to the View because of the bar, but actually item 3 of the new thing says meetings shall not take place in premises which at the time of the meeting are used for the supply of alcohol, unless no other suitable premises are available free of charge at a reasonable cost.
Yes.
But we don't actually define what a reasonable cost is, do we?
No.
So you could say, well, the Renew would be free, so we could use it. I'm not saying we should, just saying we could.
No, but I mean, as I say, what the officers are recommending is the conflict between the View's business purpose and the holding of meetings there means it's not, we don't think it's sensible to do so. What we could do, I mean, as the report explains, this is especially during the summer, so you could potentially, if you wish to, meet at the View during winter months because you're not conflicting so much with the business. But you might also take the view that it might be helpful to have one venue consistently for meetings rather than chop and change and move about. But if councillors wish to meet in the View in the winter, they probably could. But in the summer, we want to have full View open as much as possible to generate maximum income. Councillor Lord.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Town Clerk. Thank you, members. I'm just wondering, perhaps it's me, but it's now 9:10. Perhaps we could start these longer full Town Council meetings a little bit earlier. Perhaps say about 6 o'clock, something like that. Because by the time I'm going to get home tonight, it's going to be 10:30. I can't then just go to sleep. You've got to mellow out to be probably midnight before I go to bed.
Yeah,
I've got an early start tomorrow. So not every single meeting, but perhaps we could consider, I'm thinking of members of staff as well, they've been at work all day, and yourself, Adam, you've been at work all day, you can't go home, so you come straight here. If you got it at 6 o'clock, it would be absolutely fantastic. So now it would be 8 o'clock rather than 9:10. So it's just something I think we should consider for the long meetings, particularly we have long agenda items like we've got this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lord.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. I think that's a fair point.
Councillor Olivia
Thank you.
Honeyman.
We'll consider that going forwards.
Thank you. Actually, following from Councillor Lord's point, some of us don't get back to Seaford till about 6:30. So 6 o'clock would be too early, so because not everyone works in Seaford. So just a point there. Sorry? Right. I was going to bring up about 4.6, actually. So it says about, as this previously required participants sitting shoulder to shoulder with the full council. So are we going to look at options of possibly not having meetings at the council offices when we finish the municipal year for 2022? Are we going to look at alternative options?
Potentially. I think what the officers are recommending is we continue to take a staged approach at this stage. The purpose of this paper is to confirm arrangements for the rest of this municipal year, and then later in this year we'll make decisions for the future, because I think, again, we'll be in a better position to make decisions for the future. But I think it's fair to say that the informal feedback I've had certainly is that a return to the council chamber for larger meetings may not be felt to be sensible or appropriate. But in terms of beyond the end of this ministerial year, that's a decision to make a bit later on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dunn.
Regarding 2.20, members of the public attending physically to our meetings, I believe it's 12 for here at full council, please correct me if I'm wrong. If we go back into the chambers for the Wednesday committee meetings, how many public would public be allowed to attend, and how many? Thank you.
Yeah, we would obviously make sure that our risk assessment's clear about the numbers of people for whom it's sensible for the building to use. And again, I think as the report covers, based upon the committees that we've had during this municipal year, there would be sufficient room for councillors and members of the public wishing to attend within that space. Of course, we can't rule out a particular meeting requiring a significant attendance from members of the public, but so we may have to consider, we might have to consider on occasions alternative venues for particular meetings. But so certainly for example, since I've come in December, all the committees I've been to could have been accommodated within the council chamber as things stand now with COVID regulations, including public attendance.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Foreman, then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree about ceasing Zoom participation. Obviously, planning and highways have had quite a few issues with very long delays before someone can hear, looping around so you can then hear what you're saying, and it's been a total nightmare, really. Although it was great to give it a go and try, but that really hasn't worked, so I totally support ceasing that.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know in item 6 that we're proposing to hold committee meetings in the council chamber. We live stream our committee meetings and we don't have the facility to do that in the council chamber at the moment.
They were live. My understanding was that they were live streamed historically?
No, I think we were putting videos the following day onto YouTube.
Oh, okay.
You've got the ability to record it, I think not to live stream it.
Okay.
I'm not sure
George, would you like to clarify that matter for me, please?
I'm not sure it's viable to buy the equipment either for that.
So again, you'd think?
I'm not sure it's viable to buy the equipment for the council chamber, so that leaves either the church or the view.
Okay. George, would you like to respond to that, please, so we're clear on this matter? Thank you.
I don't do public speaking. Yes, we didn't previously live stream. We uploaded the next day, as the Mayor said. Section 8.3b gives the estimated cost of equipment to be able to live stream from the chambers. So that's, we reckon, around £300 to £400. So not a huge amount of money for what we would then be able to do from our own venue.
Thank you, Joe. That's really helpful. I know it's difficult to speak in these meetings, but I hope that's clear for all councillors. The recommendation is to enable live streaming wherever these meetings take place, and the £400 cost that goes with that. Councillor Meek.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I know that we've got used to live streaming, but I don't really see why we have to do that. It was only something that came in recently. As you said, we used to just upload a video the next day. I don't see any problem with that, so it would avoid the cost.
Okay, we'll cover that within the motions. Councillor Borman looks like she wants to speak as well.
Yeah, thank you. If you look at the figures of how many people actually watch the live stream, it's actually very low compared to those that actually go and watch it on the YouTube once it's been uploaded. So actually, we may not actually need to actually live stream, save the money, because it's not being used as maybe we thought it would be.
Yeah.
Okay, no point.
Anyone else? Nope. So we have a list of 9 recommendations. Should we take these one by one, or?
I think, although I think it will end up being quicker to do them one by one than to try to do them together and discover the bits that don't work together. If that's okay, Councillor Reid.
Okay, so we go through one by one. Okay, number 1, consider and discuss what level of digital presence the Town Council requires with its public meetings. Someone propose that?
Propose number 1, please. We're on page 91, Councillor Heineman.
Sorry, I can't hear. The digital presence is item 2.
Cover this, so you'll get to it as you go through the motions. But in terms of this meeting was asked, this is basically motion 1 is really to cover the discussion that's just taken place.
I think that's why, in some ways, having it together would make more.
The digital aspects, live streaming, Zoom, etc., are done within items 2 to 9 below. Sorry if that wasn't clear.
I think item 1 just moves us into the rest of the list. So somebody propose item 1. That's Kane. Someone seconds that.
Thank you.
Borman. Those in favour just of item 1. Okay, that's carried.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item 2, to approve continuing with live streaming regardless of venue, subject to the process of this proving successful and not overly onerous. So to approve continuing with live streaming regardless of venue, subject to the process of this proving successful and not overly onerous. Someone propose that?
No one wants to do it, I think. Okay.
Right, okay, no proposal, no seconder.
Yeah. Just. We're saying, would you like live streaming to continue or not? Depends on the meeting and the venue.
Okay, so Borman.
I propose that we don't have live streaming, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Borman.
Okay.
Seconder? Yeah, that's seconded.
So, anybody? I think we just put, is that, so
Yeah.
we're proposing this is a amendment to this, this recommendation. So we put the amendment, which is the proposal, we do not continue with live streaming.
You could say approve discontinuing live streaming, if you wish.
So we approve discontinuing live streaming.
Yeah. Happy with that?
That was, okay, that was proposed and seconded. Do we have that's with immediate effect, presumably?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so, well, not quite right now, but yeah.
I mean, not in the middle of this meeting, but I think this would be the last of the live stream meetings. So the amendment is now that we discontinue live streaming for subsequent meetings.
Yeah, okay.
That we've been proposed and seconded.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, obviously, if you're still going to be recording it at this particular meeting, full council here, if you're going to be recording it anyway, you might as well live stream at the same time. But it's if you're elsewhere, it doesn't have to be live streamed. So here, I'd say you might as well live stream. If you're going to do everything else, you've only got to press a button effectively, haven't you, to live stream. But obviously elsewhere, like the View or the council chamber or so on, small meeting rooms, no, it wouldn't be feasible so much. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have to record it in any case.
You're doing it anyway, aren't you, here? So.
Right, so we have the amendment is we cease live streaming.
Yeah.
Councillor Payne?
Would it not set the practice, though, that we don't live stream rather than we're going to pick the venue, because it's then saying, oh, people then say, oh, you didn't have it here because you didn't want to live stream it, you wanted to do it. Whereas if we don't have the option, I think it would be better.
Better not to live stream?
Yeah.
Right, well, I think we have that.
Okay, that's our proposal, is not to do so.
Okay, so the amendment to this is that we're now saying to discontinue live streaming. And that's been proposed and seconded. Yes?
So we can take a vote on that.
So the proposal we put now is that we discontinue live streaming. Those in favour of that?
Okay. That's carried.
We ought to count how many are against.
I can do the against as well, yeah. Okay.
How many against?
Nobody.
And so that means everybody else is abstaining then. So that,
yeah.
So that there's a majority of those voting in favour because no one voted anything else.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the amendment was carried.
Yeah. And Chair, just to say, I'll butt in as required to help you out here. Having said we'll take 1 to 9, there are bits that do go together naturally. So 3 and 4 go together because they're both considering Zoom. So councillors might find it easier to do 3 and 4 together.
Yes, I think I see heads nodding at this point. So to consider and discuss the sections of the report regarding Zoom participation within physical meetings, section 216, to agree to cease Zoom participation within its physical meetings as a result of the trial of this from May 21 to August 21, section 219. So so could someone propose those two? Councillor Payne, second, Councillor Borman. Let's vote for those as they stand. Okay, they're carried as they are.
Chair, thank you. And then similarly, Chair, I think we should take 5, 6 and 7 together.
Okay, content to do that? Nobody's objecting. Okay, 5, to consider and discuss the sections of the report regarding days of the week meetings are held. Consider and discuss the sections of the report regarding the meeting venues options. To agree to the following meeting arrangements for remainder of the municipal year 2021-22. Full council at the church venue on a Wednesday evening. Committees within the council chambers on a Thursday evening. Tuesday for golf and the View. Working groups, freedom to meet when and how each group feels comfortable to do so. So we take...
Yeah, someone will propose those.
So we take 5 to 7 together. Councillor Payne, Councillor Rutland... Sorry, Councillor. You want to speak? Sorry.
The only one that would worry me at the council chambers would be planning, because we obviously wouldn't know how many people are going to turn up, and if we then keep changing venues because we've got a lot of people turning up, that will lead to confusion. So I would suggest that we leave planning here.
Town Clerk.
If councillors wish for planning to meet here, that's possible. So would we like that as an amendment for this to 5, 6 and 7? So 7 would now read full council and planning, and then committees excluding planning. That would be the amended version of 7.
Yes.
Making sense.
Councillor Olivia Honeyman, Councillor... Are we voting in... This is now comments still, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, the only thing I was thinking about, the reason the planning and Hydro was going to go back to a Thursday is because a lot of people can't attend the Wednesdays, and the Thursdays is the key night that everyone said they can attend.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Meek. Councillor Borman's next.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, I mean, we do get some people coming to planning, but I don't think it's an overbearing number of people. I don't think we've ever had more than about 7 people, which I'd have thought would be possible, not having to have it in this venue. So,
Borman.
I'll just agree with Councillor Meek there. Obviously, if you know that you're going to have... councillors have been emailed lots and lots of objections, and we know there's going to be lots of people wanting to speak. We have, over the years, used a different venue. So we have had it at the View, we have had it at Downs Leisure Centre for meetings when you know there was huge objections. Yes, we get a few people come, but not many.
Okay.
Councillor Payne.
I'd like to withdraw my amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. But it's really helpful to, again, to have that clarity for everybody going forward. So definitely worth having the discussion. So I think, Chair, we can propose 5, 6,
So we're
7,
voting on 5, 6 and 7 as they're on the paper. Yeah. Those in favour? That's unanimous. That's carried. Okay, we're going across to 8.
Again, I think you could probably take 8 and 9 together because we're just noting the next steps, if that's okay with councillors.
Okay, so item 8, recommendation 8, to note the delegated power to officers as given in June 2023. The delegated powers as given... I'm just questioning the date.
The purpose of this is to say if there's any further COVID changes, you've already given delegated powers to address that. So just confirming that.
I'm just questioning 2023.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, it should say June 2022. That's a very good point. Thank you.
Yes.
I could even understand that through a mask. That's amazing. 2021, please, in the minutes.
Right, so I think we can take that as an acceptable amendment. So
Yeah,
to note the delegated power to officers as given in June 2021, in consultation with the members of the committee chair's management group, to determine appropriate meeting arrangements upon government announcements as required, and to note that the draft 2022-23 meeting timetable will not be presented to full council until January 2022. Someone propose those two together? Councillor Dorm, Councillor Borman, Councillor Rutland. Sorry, Councillor Vane wants to speak.
I think over the past couple of years, agendas have gradually got longer. Papers that we're asked to read have gradually got more and more complex. And I'm questioning whether the frequency of council meetings is right at the moment. Maybe we need to look at increasing that frequency so that we can deal with the weight of business that we're faced with.
I think point taken.
That's the point taken. And as we're clear within this report, we want to work with councillors for the timetable for 22-23, because clearly, I think that I'd echo that in terms of, you know, there's been some items that have come up during the year that haven't gone naturally through a meeting because we haven't had sufficient meetings for it. So I think it's worth looking at together for setting the timetable for next year.
Okay, so 8 and 9 have been proposed in the second. Councillor Richard Honeyman.
Right, thank you again, Mr. Mayor. This might be appropriate now, or I was going to do it as part of the NOUT survey, but there's a little quiz here of some councils. There's a few town councils in the area and beyond. So what do you think Newhaven, Peacehaven, Lewes, Telscombe, Hailsham, Uckfield, Crowborough, Littlehampton, Bognor Regis, Chichester, Frome and Lyme Regis got in common? Anything? No, bar one of them, which is Uckfield, none of them meet in August as a full council. So when you are looking at your schedule for next year. Surely this meeting could have been held maybe 2 weeks later in September, so you don't actually have this in a key holiday period. I know it does look as what Councillor Lord was saying. I think it's sometimes, I can understand having a full council between June and October, summer in there, but does it really have to be in the middle of August, right near the bank holiday? You know, when there's a lot of people on holiday at the moment.
I think what we can do there is that we said the meeting timetable won't be presented until January, and we're talking about the more frequent meetings to keep the agendas shorter, so presumably consideration of August would be in that.
And as you say, some of those councils I mentioned are quite large, complex councils, as much as Seaford are, with quite a lot of money that comes through their books, and they can cope without having a meeting in August.
I think if we think about the schedule across the whole year...
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So you still have to look at the whole cycle, but obviously if something really did keep coming, then obviously that's different, but as a general rule of thumb. But obviously, again, what Councillor Brown was saying, yes, obviously we are still in this sort of COVID period, so things are a little bit strange anyway still, so we have to acknowledge that, however we look at the number of frequency of meetings, isn't it? So,
okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, so it's proposed and seconded. We go to the vote now. Vote 8 and 9 as written. Those in favour? And that's unanimous again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chair.
Now we're going to item 19 on page 100, 101. Town Clerk again.
These long reports make me take so long to scroll. Okay, item 19, outside body representative appointments. Again, I'm very grateful to my officers for their support with this item. And as you can see within the report, there are two additions being recommended based upon the information that's contained within the report. One for Save the DGH and one, the second representative for Seaford Community Partnership. I think the report covers these. I'm happy to take any questions and comments. Thank you. We'll move straight to vote if there aren't any. Thank you.
And just the question is, we're not being asked to appoint a representative to the Save DGH campaign, just to say that we will have someone.
I'm going to say yes to that.
Yep. Okay, so in terms of what's there, so we're to consider appointing representatives to the Save the District General Hospital campaign, and to note that Councillor Edson is being appointed as the second but non-director outside body representative to the Seaford Community Partnership. Before we move to vote on this, anyone want to comment? I think George is coming up to say something.
She's going to tell me something.
So anyone want to debate this before we go to vote? No, I don't think so. So someone propose this? Councillor Meek, someone second this? Councillor Hyder?
We can do it through email anyway, because the motion will ask the room.
Councillor Honeyman?
Thank you. Sorry, just a quick one on 4.1A. That particular, just to say confusion, that's not the appointment which Councillor John Edmonds is joining, that one for the future. But maybe specifically, you may want to say that's part of the CARES project, the overall CARES element of Seaford Community Partnership, and not sort of the general. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, so we're clear on that. Thank you.
Right, okay. That's clear, yes? Yeah. Okay, that's something that was proposed and seconded, so those in favour? That's almost everybody. Councillor Edson, is voting? No? You vote yourself in? Okay. That's carried. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay.
We're across to item number 20, page 104, Members' Allowance Policy Review.
Okay. Again, this, as the agenda made clear in terms of the necessary work that's been undertaken through the Finance General Purposes Committee to enable us to adopt the latest version of this policy, as the report makes clear, and the policy is provided as an appendix. So again, happy to take any questions or comments on this before vote from councillors. Thank you.
This is from page 104 to 117. Comments? I mean, it's the status quo again, isn't it? It's as we are, and then there's. But
again, given obviously the importance and sensitivity of this of members' allowances, we want to make sure there's absolute transparency around decision-making with this matter and give councillors that opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So anyone want to ask questions, make comments? Okay. You're proposing the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lord.
Someone second it then?
Councillor
Payne. That's, okay, so the full council is recommended to consider the members' allowance policy and whether to adopt as presented or if the policy requires amending. So we are basically saying that it is as it is now. That there's nothing to. There's no change to be recommended or adopted.
Yeah,
so okay.
Exactly. So
Those in favour?
Motion as it stands, Chair. Yeah.
Okay. Those in favour? Any abstaining? Any against? Well, I think one abstention.
I think there was one abstention.
Two abstentions. No?
Two
Okay.
abstentions.
Okay, that's carried again.
Okay.
We go across now to agenda item 21, page 118, 119, the NALC survey, 2021 elections.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm grateful to the hard work of our Executive Support Officer and the team in preparing the ground for us to respond to this important survey. And as the report makes clear, they might have considered doing this survey in two parts, really, because some of it is very much aimed at individuals and some of it is very much aimed at organisational response. So we've made sure all councillors have the opportunity to send individual responses to the relevant questions, as we described within the report. But there are some parts of which we think is requiring of a response from the council as a body. And so again, within the report, we've explained that, and also that again that so basically we're now asking for responses from councillors. They're free to make any points this evening's meeting that will be noted, and also free to send us any further comments for officers to send a response by Friday the 10th of September. So it's before, it's for the 10th of September, and then we'll make sure we get things in time.
So just to make clear, these are the 4 questions on page 120. Yeah. Councillor Payne.
Just to clarify, is it just the councillors elected in 2021?
I think all council members.
But it's about the 2021 local elections, where there was only me and Sam that were elected.
Yeah, so the question is, Adam, is this a question for all councillors or only newly elected councillors?
It's for all councillors. I think it's probably the way that NALC have framed it themselves, because obviously many councillors would have had an election in 2021.
Yeah, yes, I would read that on across the whole of the UK, across the whole of England. Then, yeah. This is all councillors in service now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, does anyone want to make some to suggest answers to these questions now, or do you prefer to take this and to email in answers to Adam before that 10th of September deadline? I don't think anybody's lobbying to do it right now.
Okay, that's fine. The deadlines are within the report, so we just need to pass the motion in.
Right, so the council is recommended to inform the 10 councils' response to NALC's 2021 local election survey. Someone proposed that. Councillor Rutland, Councillor Borman. Those in favour? That's unanimous.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
And now, page 121, agenda item number 22, the National Resilience Strategy Call for Evidence.
Yeah.
Our Town Clerk.
Again, thanks to my officers for their support with this. And again, I think the necessary detail is contained within the report. We welcome any comments. We've only got till this Sunday to get those comments. But we're not going to, again, we don't think it's sensible to agree a response within this meeting, but we're happy to take responses from councillors that can be incorporated into the final response that will be circulated to all members. Okay.
And the questions for answer are in pages 123 to 129.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Does anyone want to make a response tonight, or are you content to feed that to Adam by email very, very quickly, given it's the,
Yeah.
do we say the 29th? Yeah, yes, it's anything that can be considered and incorporated has to be in. So in by Sunday, and it has to be sent. It has to be sent to NELC by the 10th. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So Sunday lunchtime.
That'll do.
Yeah, right,
maybe
okay.
5 o'clock on Sunday, maybe, I don't know.
Okay, can we move to the recommendations? The full council has recommended 1, to consider the report and any relevant questions of the call for evidence to which the town council may wish to submit a response. 2, to delegate power to the town clerk to collate a response to this call for evidence to be submitted to NELC based on any members' comments and a draft having been circulated to members for comment ahead of the submission. Someone propose that? Councillor Hyder and Councillor Borman. Okay, those in favour? That's unanimous. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. So thank you for your patience.
Thanks, everyone. What's the time, Councillor Reid?